Did you know at this very moment someone is on Amazon and Etsy actively looking for a quality coloring and activity book to add to their shopping cart? The only question is, will it be yours? Since you're listening to this podcast, hence the name of the show, it's pretty safe to assume that you have a keen interest in creating and selling your first or next coloring book. And it's for that reason I want to assure you you're in the right place. And I'd like to help you make it a reality by inviting you to check out the Coloring Book Creator Mentor Program, the first of its kind complete A to Z course that features live weekly coaching, resources, templates, and an extremely supportive online community, all designed to assure that you create a standout in-demand coloring book that you'll actually enjoy creating, promoting, and selling. Imagine the feeling of knowing somewhere in the world someone is adding your beautiful new book to their shopping cart, investing in a piece of your creativity. Enrollment is open and you can get started by going to coloringbookcreatorcourse.com. That's coloringbookcreatorcourse.com. You're listening to the Coloring Book Creator Podcast, episode 13. And on this episode, I'm introducing you to Kim Sarsons, author of the amazing coloring journal book, Highly Inspired Women's Creative Self-Care Retreat. Please note, Kim's book is on the subject of CBD and cannabis. A three-time published author, her latest book, Highly Inspired, was designed to serve as a creative self-care sanctuary using a combination of non-clinical art therapy, music, and mindful cannabis consumption. She's created this book to help bring balance to your mind and body and bliss to your days through mindful engagement with coloring, journaling, and cannabis. Enjoy. Alrighty, thank you so much and welcome to today's podcast episode. I am here today with my special guest, Kim Sarsons, who is a recently published coloring book author. She's published other books similar to the subject we're going to talk about today, but this is like I guess it would be like a companion type book to her other books that she's published. Kim was a part of my Publish and Promote Your Coloring Book in 30 Days program. And like I said, she's put together a beautiful book, a unique book, I think, a unique subject, or at least a unique take on a subject that maybe some of you are familiar with. And so we're going to talk about that and get her inspiration and what inspired her and give you some information about how to go check out her wonderful new book. Kim, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's wonderful to be here.
Glad to have you. Glad to have you. So, Kim, let's jump right into it. Tell us about yourself and how you decided to create a coloring book and what your coloring book is about.
Okay, the nutshell version. Um, Basically, I am a retired school teacher, recently retired school teacher, um, who was introduced to a special plant a few years ago, that being the cannabis plant. And I was intrigued by it so much because I was on my own personal wellness journey, and it was about to be legalized in Canada, where I live in Calgary, Alberta. And as the legalization date was approaching, which was back in 2018, I got really curious and I started to research and learn, study, and I ended up becoming a certified cannabis coach, meaning that I had and I have the insight and information, knowledge and expertise to introduce cannabis plant medicine to somebody who has been considering exploring it, or maybe they haven't been exploring it, but they're dealing with issues such as insomnia, chronic pain, anxiety, um, and other conditions that impact their quality of life. So being a school teacher and having this certification was a bit of a conflict because I couldn't really talk about this work with my colleagues. I didn't feel comfortable with people knowing this side of my life, simply because stigma was and continues to be very real. We've come a long way, but there's still so much more educating and work to be done so that people perceive cannabis and understand cannabis through a new lens. And that's what has inspired me to go into the book publishing route. Because being unable to really speak about it, I thought, well, maybe I could do my coaching through the written word. And I decided to publish my first book. And that led to my second book and then my third, which is the coloring book. So, yeah, the first book came into the world in February of 2022, and it's called Midlife Magic, a cannabis companion for women seeking self-care for the real world. And as I was writing that, I felt like it needed a companion. You mentioned that word before. And that companion came to be as a journal. And that journal is called Elevated Expansion. And then a few months later, I met you, Rodney, and you were offering coloring book coaching. And I thought, well, that is the perfect third part to the series by incorporating the creative, expressive, and colorful part of self-care. So I thought that this three-part series would just be a phenomenal offer for the world. And with the publication of the coloring book, which is called Highly Inspired, um, it has been realized with a lot of thanks to you for your support.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I know in the title of your coloring book, you actually have in there a creative or self-care retreat. You as
Yes.
part of your title, which I love. I love. You know, when I
Yeah.
first heard about you, Kim, when we first connected and you were sharing your subject with me, I already knew that you had published two books. And I was instantly intrigued because, you know, I have found, and what I'm very grateful for is in the people that I have has been attracted to my work and my program, which is my publish and promote your coloring book program, coaching program. I have what's been the biggest delight to me is that almost everyone has um, what would you would say would traditionally be looked at as a coloring book. It's like you're blending and juxtaposing your passions and interest and other things, and then finding that particular unique slant, and that you created this coloring slash activity type book, which I think has been one of the greatest surprises for me with it, because there's a feeling of uniqueness and freshness. I mean, I'm being very clear not to, to say, what you would maybe label as more traditional coloring books. It's not an either or, but your personality and your passions and the things that are important to you, your message, you've been able to channel that into what I would really call a work of art that literally allows people to express their artistic side without them feeling like they need to be a professional artist, while exploring a topic that has to be of interest to them. Otherwise, they wouldn't pick up your book.
Hmm.
So I find that to be the biggest treat for me out of all of it. And I know your book, just as recording this interview, I think your book now is going on. Has it been a full 2 weeks yet since it finally got published?
I got the email from Amazon saying congratulations when I woke up on Christmas morning.
That's
So it was probably the middle of the night on Christmas Eve. Yeah.
okay.
So that
Wonderful.
would mean 10 days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
about 10 days ago. So I
Yeah.
know it hasn't. The only reason why I'm referencing the data when it got published, because it hasn't been out that long. But I'll be really curious to hear, and we'll have you back, for a future follow-up interview of the response. Or have you gotten people who have responded to the book? Have you've heard from anyone yet about the response to the book?
Well, I had a few cheerleaders along the way who were really excited for it to be published and so
Mhm.
they could get a copy. So I know that it's in a few of those hands already in there, or not in their hands yet, but soon will be, because they've ordered. And yeah, I've checked just today and there was another one Another sale. So it's getting out there into the world slowly
Wonderful.
but surely. Um, and yeah, just general excitement. And I actually met with a friend today who is also in the cannabis world. We didn't actually know each other face to face before. We were in the same Telegram group for a while.
Mhm.
And when I told her that I was having this conversation today and had just published a coloring book that focused on cannabis for self-care for women and that encouraged slowing down and being creative and just having time for yourself. Her response was like, this is amazing. This is what we need. This is going to help get the positive cannabis messages out there while helping people at the same time, because that's what it's all really about, is changing perspectives through information and through education, but also providing a sense of community. Like I feel as though this book allows people, women in particular, to see that there are others who gravitate towards this medicine and want to have the kind of serenity that you get through an activity such as coloring. Like they go together so nicely, the plant medicine and the act of coloring, because as you said before, like you don't have to be an artist to artistically express yourself.
Mhm.
And there's safety within, we'll call it the confines of a coloring book, because you've got the parameters of the image there, the words, if it's got words, and you just select the colors and go with your heart and see what comes up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you did answer the question I was going to ask next already, but just so everyone listening will know, um, tell us the name again of the coloring book and who is it? Who would be the perfect fit for this? The person would be for this book.
Right. It's called Highly Inspired, a women's creative self-care retreat. And it's a cannabis coloring book and journal for women. So really, any woman who is already has a relationship with cannabis or is embarking on a relationship with cannabis, this is like a nice ease into that world. It does contain some information. It's not coloring pages alone, but it contains a bit of information about the endocannabinoid system,
Mhm.
which is a system in our bodies that interacts with the compounds in the cannabis plant. And through that interaction is the experience of balance. This system in our bodies, its primary goal or its primary purpose is to maintain an inner balance. So the um, uh, the book contains a bit of information about that system, as well as the coloring pages, some journaling pages. And because cannabis is such a diverse plant and can be experienced in a plethora of ways, I also thought it would be wise to include dosing pages, which the intention of those is for tracking the medicine, the particular strain or the particular type of ingestion method, that type of thing that's being used, so that there's a documentation of it or record of it, so that you could have you could explore, go back to that as a reference and have a repeat experience. If you decided that a particular strain and ingestion method worked really well for you and you want to repeat that, then having that written down inside of the book is really easy for accessing and going back to, so you can have the
Wonderful.
same type of experience. Or likewise, if it's a negative experience, maybe you were looking for someone who's looking to be um, experiencing some quiet and calm, and the strain that they experienced or worked with made them really energized and they started cleaning the house because they had all this energy. That keeping track of that is important as well, because then you know, oh, which strains or cultivars, they're also called, are beneficial for different types of activities. So that's incorporated as well.
You made me think of when you were speaking about, all the different features and I guess exercises and activities, if you will, that readers can do with the book. Do you have any plans of, or are you currently considering any type of like some kind of a workshop or a class or something or anything along that line that someone can make as a companion to this particular book? They have deeper questions and so forth.
Well, I'm currently in the process of developing what we'll call a coaching program, a container for a coaching program. And the intention of that is to invite women who are in a particular phase of life, the midlife range, which is where I currently am, introducing them to cannabis, introducing them to other holistic self-care practices in a way that uh, helps them develop the confidence through the knowledge and education about the plant and how to engage with it, so that they can start to develop their own protocols, you could say. So that is something that I've been working on for the past little while. Like, it's essentially taking the information from my different work and the different um, resources that I've developed and bringing them to life and utilizing them in that educational container, so that like, it's something that the few years ago that I decided to explore cannabis, I was very much on my own until I found a guide. And as I said earlier on, um, being unable to kind of talk openly about my work with cannabis at school with my colleagues, I decided to go the book route. And now that the books are done, it's like I'm ready to step into them
Mm-hmm.
as the coach and the guide that can be the person to help women come to this plant in an informed way with the right intention, and the intention being to just feel better, feel happier, sleep better, like all the things that cannabis can support at this phase of life. So that's, dealing with symptoms of menopause, dealing with mood swings, dealing with insomnia, dealing with all of this stuff, and just learning how to ultimately shift the priority list, where a lot of women over the decades with career and with family and all of those obligations, we end up finding ourselves very low on our own priority list.
Mm-hmm.
And we end up unwell, we end up burnt out, we end up resentful, we end up all these negative places.
Mm-hmm.
And cannabis is a way to help regulate and restore balance. And but first you have to decide that you're going to put yourself at the top of your priority list.
Mm-hmm.
So incorporating things like the art and the coloring and everything just creates more, um, you could say, like a greater container for, it just enhances the container for that self-care, that intentional, holistic, natural. That's a big thing in my belief system, that things, the more natural they are, the better, right? And cannabis comes from the earth. It's a wonderful plant, tremendous diverse applications, and it's just been misrepresented, and
Mm-hmm.
more people need to know about the benefits of it. And hopefully, through this type of work and educating, hopefully more policies will come down the pipes, and greater access and all of that will happen. And even people getting released from prison for having um, small scale, like possession, because there's a lot of people that are
Right.
incarcerated for cannabis possession across Canada, across the US, right?
Right. Right.
And in Canada, now that it's legal, those people shouldn't really be in jail anymore. And same with
Yeah.
certain
Yeah.
states in the US.
Well, and it sounds to me too is that, what you really, in my, what's coming to me intuitively to say is that you really are creating a movement, if you will, the education, the health benefits. I mean, of course, we all know about, people who, what they call medicinal, purposes and things like that and what have you. So I think because that's become more of an alternative form of care for a lot of people who would traditionally wouldn't even consider it, I think that's maybe softened some opinion and perhaps opened up people's mind to at least wanting to learn more about it. And what I pick up on is based on this book and your previous books is that this is kind of what I would, and I don't mean it in a derogatory way, but like a soft introduction
Hmm.
to what this is all about in a way that's not, because I think a lot of people did too also when we hear about, what do you want to call it, weed or pot or whatever, it gets associated with this with an undesirable element. And so things get lumped in together without fully understanding. And I feel like what you're doing is you're creating a platform and a movement to educate people, so that some of the stigma will begin to fall away and that it's not something that is uh, going to be the downfall of society as some people want to
Yeah,
put that
there's
label on. So,
yeah, shifting perception
mhm,
through education, through like you said, and my book, Midlife Magic, has been called A Gentle Introduction to Cannabis, and I really like that. So your words are adequate and good and suit the whole vision of it because there's beliefs out there that need to be changed. And this not just in this topic, but generally speaking, right?
mhm, mhm,
But
mhm,
as as I look at my own life and how I didn't have cannabis until I was in my later 40s, and I ended up going down certain paths of self-neglect and paying a significant price. And I elaborate on that story in Midlife Magic. And I experienced a number of things that I believe were a result of just my approach to life, and that came from the demands that were upon me as a parent, as a career person, school teacher. Everybody carries so many loads, right? And we just manage, and we take on more. We end up not very well. And I was in that place and I ended up not very well. And it was after that that cannabis came into my life, as I said,
mhm.
just in 2018, early 2018. So not too long ago. But had I had access to it as an educated person, if I had been well informed about it, felt comfortable with it, had access to medicine that I knew was properly grown, all of that, then I think I would not have ended up in the dire situation that I did end up in. It would have been an ally for me earlier on in my life, and I probably wouldn't have gone down the same path, which led me to being hospitalized, and it's quite a story. Um, And so I don't want other people to go down that type of path of suffering when it's so needless,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
It's like here is a medicine that is accessible in all across Canada, thank goodness, in many parts of the US, and coming on more and more, right? There was just New York City just opened up like a week ago or something like that. Lineups down Broadway to
oh,
this
wow.
extent.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, things are happening. And I think if the educational light continues to shine, that's what's really, really important. But ultimately, like, it's Has to be, I see it as being a grassroots thing, and that women, a lot of women can lead the charge because, I mean, cannabis medicine comes from a female plant. That's a very special relationship right there.
Hmm.
It's a caregiving plant. Women are natural nurturers and caregivers. Like there's just this perfect synergy, of who we are as women and and what the plant is, and the fact that we have a system in our bodies that is designed to work with it. It just makes sense. And for people to say no to it or to be fearful of it, they simply just need more information.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Well, what I
and
love,
this is a way, but through books, it's a way of disseminating information. And
yeah.
coloring books also invite in that youthful part of us that we tend to lose as we get older and become more serious and focused on work and all these life obligations, right? So
Hmm.
a coloring book allows for that return to childhood
Hmm.
because everybody loves coloring, right? Who doesn't love
Yeah. Well, and I'll say for me, and and again, for me personally, I was given a coloring book for a Christmas gift several years ago. I don't remember exactly when. I've always one of my lifelong travel dreams is to go to Paris, and my definite plan for 2023 is to go to Paris before the year is out. So, but anyway, this dear friend of mine at the time gave me a coloring book for Christmas on these beautiful illustrated pages of like old world Paris back in the
it.
1800s.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest, when I mean, I was, of course, I loved I enjoyed the gift because it was on the subject, but I didn't consider myself, a colorist, if you will, not that you had to be a trained colorist or, whatever. But anyway, she
Mm-hmm.
gave me that in pencils and I thought it was a really sweet gift, but I never colored a page out of it. And
Mm-hmm.
then what happened many years later, I moved and then I ended up like donating the book or something like that and never, really touched it. And then not going down the rabbit hole of my whole story, but long story short, I had had some major life transitions happen in my life and I became inspired to create my own coloring book, my first coloring book. Was almost going on 2 years ago. And I just found it such a full circle moment because it was creating the book, which I thought was what the end result or the goal was. But what it ended up being was being in community with another group of people and coloring with them. And it gave me
Mm-hmm.
that, okay, you got a commitment to be here every week at this time. And we're gonna just get a small little almost like a knitting circle, but we're gonna color together.
Yeah.
And I found
Mm-hmm.
myself accessing a whole other part of my being. I found myself calming down. I found myself interacting and engaging, but without me, having to um, teach anything or having anything being taught to me. We just had our own little individual canvases and our own individual, very simple tool, which was a coloring pencil, and that time together. And that's when I really got the power of the art of coloring and using it as
Mm-hmm.
a form. I see why people liken it to a form of therapy. Um, because in a sense, it does access another side of our brains where as you're reading a book, which I love books and I love to read, but that's taking information in and processing it. Coloring, I don't have to do that. My only process I have to think about is what color do I want to lay down?
Mm-hmm.
And once I've done that, and maybe after I do it, I may be going on with things in my mind that, oh, I don't know if I like that combination, but it's not like it's going to stop me, you know, kind of a thing. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I really coming now full circle. I feel I enjoy so much about what inspired me and what's inspired you and so many of the other authors that have come through the program is that you've been able to take a subject that you're passionate about, something that I would go so far as to say, at least in your particular example, Kim, is a mission and a purpose for you, but you're combining it and juxtaposing, as I said at the top of the interview, with a very um, m- let me use this word very carefully here. I want to say a mindful act of creativity. I don't want to say mindless, but a mindful act of creativity that lets you suspend for a minute the need to process something so that you can relax. I think relax the nervous system so that you can be open to maybe this particular book that you are talking about today will be the gateway for them to know about the other books that you have, and then on and on and on, you know. So you have any thoughts about that? Because that was something that came to me as you were speaking.
Well, the piece about coming together in community, uh, it really resonates because when I think of cannabis, it does that. Like you can think of people sharing in the plant medicine together, like that that image of passing around the medicine,
Mhm.
sharing it is big. And I mean, not so much since COVID, but um, there's that sharing element and benefiting together element and not having expectations per se, and coming to sitting together with the intention of just being and coloring and um, getting the inspiration to select a color, to create a design or what have you, is really aligned with how cannabis can make you feel. So they're kind of similar, as far as being therapeutic in that way, because they both allow for an escape,
Mhm.
and not an escape in the sense of like ignoring responsibilities and such, but just taking that time, as I said before, about self-care and prioritizing yourself and deciding that, having a few minutes of mindful activity that may appear mindless, but is mindful,
Mhm.
is really important to general well-being and emotional state, and all of it is affected. So, when I think of the program that I want to bring to the world, I definitely envision weekly or bi-weekly meetings where we come together and we work in the realm of art, and it's not for any sort of, like, it's not about the end product. It's not about what it looks like at the end. It's about just being in that process and benefiting from that experience and creating something really lovely by the end. And what it might not be lovely to everybody, but that doesn't matter. That
Right.
doesn't matter.
Right. Right. And I think the more that we take off all of the, well, what I found for myself is that when you take away the expectation about what we personally deem of as perfect,
Hmm.
we take that part away, it takes us back to when we were children if we had crayons.
Yep.
And the
Just the
child
joy of it.
just, yeah, the child just scribbled what we would
Hmm.
call scribblings or whatever, but there was not about coloring inside the line, and everything had to be shaded and so neat and, and all of that.
Hmm.
That's what to
Hmm.
me the coloring process represents to me is that. Now, of course, there'll be many who will want to do all that I just said, which is color inside the lines and do all the right blending and shading and gradient and tonalities and all of that. And there's nothing wrong with
Hmm.
that. But it's sort of, to me, I liken it to that, because one of my favorite toys as a kid was crayons.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
same.
it sort of represents that, for
Yeah,
me.
I can remember really vividly, and I still actually have this one particular coloring book, um, from the 1900s, like the
Mm,
1970s, I guess.
yes.
When I was a kid, I still have it. I didn't finish it, but it was something that I took great pride in. It was something I did well. It was something that I just did for myself. Like it was just a joyful activity, adding color to the world and having that. that quiet space. And I don't know, like it was just probably in the cold darkness of winter is probably when I did it the most because it was too cold.
Mhm.
Whenever it was too cold to go outside,
Mhm.
uh, I would I would engage in that. And it's interesting that I still have that book after all
Mhm.
these years.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the process. This is one question I ask everyone that I interview for this series is
Mhm.
now that you've actually now gotten it done, and I'm speaking specifically about your coloring book, what would you say has been your biggest learning experience and or slash challenge in this process?
Um, let's see. Biggest learning, I guess, to be patient with the process of finalizing it because you create this piece of work and then you give it to Amazon and ask them to finalize it for you. And sometimes something is a little bit off. You
Mhm.
have to fix that. And it's a process of waiting and making adjustments, different iterations, even though you think you've covered all the bases.
Mhm.
So that becomes a little bit of a trial.
Mhm.
Um, but there's that. And what did you say? So what was
Well,
the,
I would say because and then I'm going to even tailor it even more specifically to you. Um,
okay.
since you've published written books,
Hmm.
and now that you've had the experience of publishing and creating a coloring book, were there any notices? Was there any differences between that experience of a written book and now doing a coloring or art, an art related book? Was there any differences in that you noticed, or was it very similar?
Well, yeah, a mix, I guess. Because I like to include text in everything that I do, that it's so that the book has kind of a personality or a like dynamic quality to it. So it's the design part I find quite enjoyable, like deciding what's going to go where and how everything is going to be laid out. And you've seen the book, so you know
Mhm.
how kind of process oriented I am in that regard.
Mhm.
Um, I did work with an artist for some of the book,
Mhm.
and so that was a new experience for me, and I was very happy with that collaboration. And another piece, actually, that sort of related to your question, is um, just regarding an element of the book that I never expected. It just kind of sort of happened the way things do in life. I was given the opportunity to connect with uh, a doctor down in the US who specializes in the endocannabinoid system. And one of the therapies or strategies that offers to her patients who come to her feeling, overwhelmed and anxious and otherwise needing some kind of medication, like they would naturally be inclined to go towards like anxiety medication or that type of thing. She prescribes coloring to her patients. And when I learned about her and was connected with her, we we immediately like we're aligned, and she agreed to write the foreword for this book. My other books don't have a foreword. This one has a foreword
Oh, I
where
love
she
it.
speaks to the benefits of like non-therapeutic art, or she calls it mindfulness-based art therapy. Uh, so that piece of this journey has been different than the other parts from the other books because I was doing those more on my own. I did have contributors to Midlife Magic. I can mention that, but to have a foreword written by a doctor who specializes in the realm, the, the realm that I do, but in her own way to express the importance of a modality like art, um, and how it combines so nicely with cannabis for reducing anxiety, for addressing self-care, all of that. as opposed to going to the pharmacist and getting a prescription. Like that's a pretty big deal.
Hmm.
And so that made this book all the more exciting to create because I knew it was going to be validated by a doctor.
Ah.
So that doesn't quite fully answer. I kind of diverged from your question,
Well,
but
no, I
it's
mean,
just a different element to the book. And it just, um, yeah, it just added more energy and excitement to the whole thing.
yeah. No, well, and I mean, and to me, it totally answers the question, at least in my interpretation of it, is because, again, I likened it to, or I asked you to compare it to, the experience of having published solely text-based books to now, this art and, coloring and activity type book. And again, you followed your heart, you followed your passion, you followed what had meaning for you. You didn't just try to put together a book that just had pages to color in it for the sake of doing it that way. Um,
Right.
but you brought in your passion and you brought in everything about you. And that's what I have found consistently throughout the second cohort and the first cohort too, but definitely the second cohort of this program is that you came in with your passions and your ideas and the things that really had true meaning to you, not just something to put together, to slap together a book to throw up on Amazon, but something that you really put thought and time and attention and care into. And I know that because you went into it with that intention energetically, in this context, in your case, this particular individual wanted to validate it even further, and so you
Hmm.
attracted that opportunity, I feel, to you to get that additional validation, if you will, for what you've
Hmm.
done. So it just, to me, it answers the question that i I have, as, I guess, if I want to call myself a coach or a mentor, is I want my students and my members to bring everything about them to the table. Don't leave anything off. And we'll find the gem that's there. And so you already had a very clear mission and purpose when you came in. I've had a couple of other people that came in with very clear missions and purposes. And so I find the books, this particular cohort, to be very fresh and unique and very personal, but with, I shouldn't say broad appeal, the right specific appeal. And that's what's made this such a beautiful journey to watch you all go through this experience, challenges and all,
Hmm.
and stick with it, and then create what I consider to be, in my opinion, a work of art. And I consider that for all of your books. So, I thank you for sharing all of it with us and telling us about everything that inspired it. And I just see nothing but more and more opportunities for you coming down the pike. Let me ask you this question before I ask you where people can get the listeners can get the book. Are you planning another follow up or companion book to the one
Oh,
that just came
okay.
out?
So this is a good question. The person who connected me with the doctor, she and I have been talking recently because a number of months ago, I think it was even before I started to consider the idea of a coloring book, the idea of doing a multi-author book was something that came to. I was inspired to lead that, having already published my own story and my own books and my own journal. I thought there are more women out there who have stories about a transformation thanks to cannabis plant medicine, and these stories need to be told. And so I shared that and I started collecting some stories just anecdotally from people. And then I formalized it a little bit more. And now I'm in the process of working with this other person, Amy is her name, to work out uh, a way to bring the right people together who have these stories that will just help change perceptions and change attitudes and such, because they're the human, they're the human journey of change. And so with her help, kind of like how you've supported this journey with the coloring book, with her help, I'm going to be leading, co-leading, facilitating, whatever we want to call it, a group of women to write their stories and then compile them together in a book that will have more than stories, but have some reference components so that the medicine is referred to and people can kind of look at like a, what is it called? Like an appendix, right? An
Okay.
appendix of information. So
Okay.
there'll be the stories and then this information that people can look to support them again on their own exploration. So it's going from being an independent creator to co-creating with a group of people. So that's a vision for 2023. And just I'm seeking more women with more stories and who are interested in getting them out into the world, and just feel a little bit nervous about doing that, and finding their writer's voice and all of that, and crafting the story. And I used to be a teacher, as I said, right? So 27 years teaching public school. I've done a lot of work with students and teaching them how to write and revise and edit and all of that. So I think it's a nice, it makes sense as the next step in this journey of creating books and bringing stories to the world, and hopefully making change, inciting some change in some lives.
Absolutely.
So I'm pretty excited. If you know anyone who might be interested in contributing, you can connect them to me.
Well, that's wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
let's move it right. So just so everyone listening, I'm going to have notes, links to everything, including how to connect with Kim in the show notes of the podcast so you can reach out to her. But I want to, first of all, want the most important link is where people can go and purchase the book. So where can listeners pick up a copy of Highly Inspired Women's Creative Self-Care Retreat? Where can we get that beautiful book?
It is available on Amazon. So I will share the direct link with you
Mm-hmm,
to add to those show notes.
mm-hmm.
I'm also, if you're in my area of Calgary, I will soon have physical copies available through me. And that's really it right now.
Okay.
Um, Hopefully I'll find some more places to offer, make it available. But
Mm-hmm.
currently Amazon is the number one go-to for that,
Okay.
for all of them. Yeah.
And I'll ask you this: is there a way for people to connect with you on social media anywhere?
Yeah. So I have an Instagram page. It's called, do you want me to tell you what it is?
You can say it because
Or
I'm going
you'll
to put
put
the
it in the
link in the
notes?
show notes. Yeah, you can say if you'd like, and I'll put the link in the show notes as well.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's Kim S Coach. So KIMESS Coach, all one word. That's my Instagram.
Okay.
And then my TikTok, which I'm learning how to use,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
is called High on Midlife, all one word. High on Midlife. And then, of course, I'm on Facebook.
On Facebook.
That's
So
easy
I'll
stuff.
put the links to all of Kim's contact information, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all inside the show notes, as well as the link to where you can purchase the book on Amazon. And so if you want to follow up with her, or if you, again, she's collecting stories for a new book that she's putting together. So if you or someone you know might be interested in that, feel free to use one of those links to connect with her and just have a conversation. I'm so excited for what you've done and what you created. Like I said, when you came into my program, so for you listening, at the time I'm recording this, the doors for the next cohort of my, I'm calling it now the Coloring Book Creator Program, which we have a publish and promote your book in 30 day component to that. But I'll be talking about that, and the doors of that will be reopening again the 1st of February. So if you're listening to this, depending upon when you're listening to this, there may either be a link to add your name to the early notification list. But I would say, and I'll have a link there in the show notes as well. But do listen to this interview with, after you listen to this interview with Kim, I have a few other interviews that I've also have created, again, from pretty much from my most recent cohort of the program for you to listen to, so you can hear their stories and their journey as well. And hopefully it will inspire you as the listener creating your own coloring book one day. And if it's the right fit, I'd love to be there to help support you. So with that said, Kim, I have one final question. Any final words for anyone listening that is dreaming of creating a coloring book of their own? Any words of advice or um, encouragement you have for them?
Yeah, I think if you are feeling inspired to bring such a project to the world and you've got, just a little extra time on your hands, it doesn't take a lot of time and
Mm-hmm.
and the willingness to learn, because there's definitely a learning curve when it comes to this type of work, and also the the enthusiasm to step outside of your comfort zone, because as we get older, we have a tendency to become a little more rigid in our thinking, and we don't take risks a lot of the time. We need people to encourage us to do that, and it's always great when there's like a mission, or there's something bigger than yourself that's driving you to get your work out into the world, because that work matters, and no matter what it is, it could be anything. Like, I have my area of interest, my topic could be literally anything, and it will brighten somebody's day, and um, the world will be a better place because of that new addition to it. So I would say just just go for it. It's fun, and Rodney's a great guy. He's very helpful, as you can hear. He's a very gentle human being who's very supportive, and just wants everybody to succeed. And um, yeah, it's good to have people like that in your corner. So
Yeah.
just do it, people.
Just
Yes.
do it. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, just do it. Yeah, because as I said, I didn't have, I had a passion for books. I always have had a passion for books and publishing. I've been self-publishing in one form or another for many years. Went through all of the heartaches and the woes and the troubles, and long before well, I published my first book when the only internet as we know it was available was AOL. So that tells you how long ago.
A while back.
I
Yep.
published the book. So things have gotten so much easier now, but
Yeah.
it doesn't hurt to have that little extra eye to kind of look
Yeah.
over things and support you and to give you that encouragement. And as I said before, whatever, when you hear the word coloring book, whatever that conjures for you, especially if you're an enthusiastic colorist, you're familiar with all the different books that are out there. But what I wasn't in something that I orchestrated. It just worked out that way, that the beautiful souls that came to me to work with me in this program all had their own unique vision that
Mhm.
they translated in some form or another through creating their own coloring books. So that in of itself, again, as I said earlier, and I'll say it again, has been such a treat for me, because it's one of the things I say when I've done workshops in the past, and it sounds like an oxymoron, but it truly isn't about the book.
Mhm.
It really isn't.
It
I
is
mean,
and it isn't.
yeah, yeah, it is and it isn't.
Because I
But
remember, I remember, sorry to jump in, but I remember the day that we met on a Zoom call, and I had my book essentially done, and I took you on a tour through it,
Mhm.
and your reaction was so affirming for me that I was going the right direction, and that, like, the fact that some of the choices I made inspired you, Like when the student inspires the teacher, it feels really good. Because I've been in the role of the teacher, as you know, I talk
Yes.
about. And when you're the teacher and you're inspired by your students because they're doing cool things that you hadn't thought of before, or they're just approaching things in a way that you hadn't considered before, or whatever it is,
Hmm.
it just opens up so much more, and it feels really good. So when I was sharing that with you and you were like, I could tell you had a big smile on your face and you had really great energy and response to it, because honestly, this topic, as I mentioned, has been a sensitive one for me. Like it's one that I want to get out into the world. It's one that I am proud of, but at the same time, I've had these fears and apprehensions around people misjudging me or
Hmm.
jumping to conclusions about me because of this relationship I have with a plant. Like it sounds silly when you say that, because
Hmm.
I have a relationship with a plant. But you were very open and super receptive and enthusiastic. And like when I shared that I was including a playlist and all of that, and creating like a multi-sensory experience, that's what I wanted it to be. Um, yeah, you just gave me really good feedback, and that good positive feedback as well as constructive feedback is what propels really good work. So
Yeah.
Rodney gets a special thank you at the end of my book.
Thank you. Thank you. And I appreciate that. Thank you. I received that. Thank you so much. Yeah, I get inspired. It's so funny as I'm looking at the title of your book, and and I'm not just saying it because it's the title of your book, but it's the truth. In this moment, I'm highly inspired by what you brought to the table. And again, it all comes down to, I would just say this: if you're listening to this and this is something that you've been thinking about, just thinking about, but you didn't know how or what it was going to be about or where it was going to be about or whatever the case may be. That's actually really good. Or if you have more of a clearly defined message and ideas and so forth, kind of like Kim, that's fine too. But I always am a firm believer in what I call the three C's, which is connection, collaboration, and creation. And I run everything I try to do through those three C's. Is it helping me to connect with people in a certain way that feels really highly elevated to me? Again, trust me, I'm not scripting these words because that's what you're. Something that came out of my mouth, I
Admiring
said,
your
that kind of
language.
sounds scripted, but no. But no, but I found
Inspired language is great.
Yeah, but I found it to be, very much about that. I love the connection piece of it. And then I feel like when there's a deep connection, then together you collaborate on ideas and things. And it feels like a collaboration, not me telling someone what to do, but, gently guiding obviously there's technical aspects to putting this physically together. But
Yes.
that's not so much. The collaboration part comes in is where, okay, this is the idea I have. What do you think about it? And having that second set of eyes. And sometimes I found, and if you'd like to speak to that for a moment too, we have a Facebook group that's connected to the program. And so, for example, when you got your forward from the doctor, you shared that in the group, and the members were very inspired and supportive of you and making that announcement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's nice to have a place to celebrate, because not everyone is going to really know what you're up to, like in your personal life, let's
Hmm.
say.
Hmm.
They're not interested or whatever, and that's okay.
Hmm.
But when you have a community of people who are walking a similar path, and you have an achievement or they have an achievement, and it's exciting. Like oftentimes we don't celebrate enough. We don't acknowledge our accomplishments enough. I don't know why we do that, but we do. We tend to downplay the good work that we do.
Hmm.
So it's really nice to have that community aspect where you can express the good and the not so good. Like if you're stuck, or
Right.
you need feedback on an idea, or you would like some insight um, into something that you've been brainstorming a little bit. Like it's always good to have a, a, a common, like, mega mind, I guess,
Yeah, a
to
commonality and having,
yeah.
like I said, that collaboration piece. I feel
Mm,
I was really excited to see that happen with this second cohort. Was, people posting a challenge that they have or a question that they had about, what do you think about my cover? And I mean, there was even collaborations where a couple of students got together to help design the cover or to go over the designs that went inside the book. Or again, I'm thinking about this or I'm stuck with that. It's not, I love the fact that you all supported and stepped up and encouraged each other because, as you know, as being an author of two other books, writing is a very solitary act.
mhm.
And unless you're in a
Yeah,
writing group or a class or a workshop, you really don't have anybody. Well, you may have a friend or two that you might be willing to share your manuscript with as you're writing. But for the most part, most of us keep that under wraps while we're writing, you know. Um,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
we do.
so I think building your book, creating your book in a collaborative space, like the Facebook group that accompanies the program, I feel was a value add asset that I really am grateful that because it all is hinging. You all are the engine of that. I
Mhm.
can connect you together, but you all are the engine of whether or not those conversations actually happen. So I'm very appreciative of your support of the other students and them of their support of you. So that's been a very wonderful thing to see.
Yeah, it's a beautiful addition, and it just it helps to see things through because sometimes people we start things, we're very ambitious at the beginning of a process, and then we run out of fuel, or we run out of inspiration, or we run out of steam, or so
Mm-hmm.
to have someone or a group of people who are kind of checking in, how's it going,
Mm-hmm.
or setting some deadlines and that kind of thing, and
Mm-hmm.
having that external motivation
Mm-hmm.
is really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Indeed. Well, with that said, I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of your inspired journey to put this beautiful book together. Again, the links to everything is in the show notes for all of you listening. But just want to just one more time say thank you so much, Kim, for being with us this afternoon and just sharing your journey with us. I really, really appreciate it. And I know many people are going to be inspired by all of your story, not just the part about the book itself, but your journey in and of itself. So I thank you for that.
And I thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about the process and the book and why I do what I do.
Mm-hmm.
um, it's yeah, an important piece of the whole vision, making change in the world. So you're part of that, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
That that support and all of it. Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
great to talk with to be with your community as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't wait to hear the responses to the interview. So, speaking of interview, like I said, there's going to be a few more interviews. I'm not quite sure of the final number yet in this series, but there will be at least 3 interviews, or maybe up to 5 in this series. But of course, as I publish a new one, you'll hear it. Again, so this series I'm launching again in the beginning of January to listen through the month of January, and hopefully it will get you inspired to think about what your idea of what your coloring book could be. As I said, I'm going to be teaching a workshop at the end of January that will lead into a challenge, a 3-day challenge that I'm going to host, where I'm going to be helping you define that idea and refine that idea, but also help get you in the mindset to prepare you for this journey. Because again, it's not hard. It can be have challenging moments, but again, you're not on your own with it. So again, I'll be giving links in the show notes about how to find out about that workshop series when it comes up. And then if it's a fit, consider joining me for the next cohort of the Coloring Book Creator program, which will be launching in doors reopening in early February. So with that said, I want to say again, thank you to Kim. Thank you for listening today. Check out the other interviews in this series, and we'll be connecting and speaking soon. Also, I have a Facebook group called Coloring Book Creator Live. If you'd like to stay on top of developments over the month of January, join that free Facebook group, because that's where you'll be able to listen to the replays of this, as well as I think, Kim, I think you're in that group as well. So if you have a question, want to pop in, just pop it in, and if she sees it, she might even give you a quick answer. But anyway. Yeah.
Hey, just tag me. Yep.
Okay. All righty. So thank you again, everyone. Have a great rest of your day or evening, whatever time you're listening to this. Until next time, keep creating and keep staying inspired. All right. Take care. Alrighty. So let me just stop the recording.